Welcome to Daily Life in the Past. Here, we explore how ordinary people lived before modern technology and comfort shaped everyday life. If you enjoy learning about the past, feel free to leave a comment and let us know where you are watching from. And if you would like to support the channel, a like or subscription is always appreciated. For most of human history, evening was not a second daytime. It was a narrow, dim part of the day with its own rules. When the sun went down, people did not simply turn on the lights. They faced darkness, cold, and risk. Evening life depended on the season, the moon, the weather, the setting, and the cost of fuel. This program explains what evenings were like before electricity, focusing on how people used light, how they planned time, what they did after dark, and why activity was limited. It also explains how towns tried to control nighttime order long before modern police and electric streetlights. First, it helps to define what before electricity means. Electric lighting arrived in the late 1800s and spread unevenly. But for most households, especially outside major cities, evening routines remained shaped by flame lighting well into the 1900s. Before electric power networks, light came from fire, hearth fires, candles, oil lamps, and later gaslight in some towns. Each source had limits and costs, and those limits shaped behavior. The most important fact is simple: artificial light was expensive and weak compared to modern standards. A single candle could light a small area close to the flame, but it did not flood a room with bright light. Oil lamps could be brighter, but oil was costly and required care. Good indoor lighting was often a sign of wealth. In many homes, the main light source at night was the hearth. The fire provided warmth and some light. People gathered close to it because the rest of the room fell into shadow. Where there was no fireplace, there might be a small brazier or a simple fire pit, depending on place and time. But even a fire does not provide steady, focused light for detailed work. It flickers, it smokes, and it creates glare. It helps you move around and talk. It does not make later night reading easy. Because light was limited, evenings were planned around daylight. Many tasks were timed to finish before dusk. The evening meal often came earlier than many people expect today, especially in winter, because people did not want to spend extra fuel to light and heat the house for long hours. Season mattered greatly. In summer, long daylight reduced the need for artificial light. People could work late outdoors and still see. In winter, darkness came early. That could mean more time indoors, but not necessarily more time awake. The cost of light and fuel, plus the cold, often encouraged earlier sleep. Moonlight also mattered. On bright, clear nights with a full moon, travel and outdoor tasks were easier. In many places, people planned certain activities around the moon. A dark, cloudy night could make roads nearly invisible, especially outside cities. Now, consider the basic tools of lighting. Candles were common but varied widely in quality. In many parts of Europe and North America, ordinary households often used tallow candles, made from animal fat. These could smoke, smell, and drip. Wealthier households used beeswax candles, which burned cleaner and brighter. Another high-quality option in the 1700s and early 1800s was spermaceti, a waxy substance from sperm whales used for very bright, clean-burning candles. These higher-grade candles cost much more, so they were saved for guests, special rooms, religious services, or important tasks. For poorer households, there were even simpler options like rushlights, where plant stems were dipped in fat to make a small, short-lasting light. These were dim and uneven, but they were cheap. Oil lamps were another major option. Many types existed. Some burned vegetable oils, others burned fish oils. In the United States, whale oil was widely used for lighting from the 1700s into the 1800s. Oil lamps demanded attention. Wicks had to be trimmed. Chimneys and lamp parts had to be cleaned. Fuel had to be stored safely. By the late 1700s, improved lamp designs produced brighter, steadier light. The Argand lamp, developed around 1780, used a special wick design and a glass chimney to create a stronger flame with better airflow. For those who could afford it, such lamps made evening tasks easier. But easier still did not mean modern brightness. It meant that reading or sewing became more practical for longer periods, especially close to the lamp. In the mid-1800s, kerosene lamps became important because kerosene was often cheaper and brighter than many older fuels. But kerosene still required careful handling. It was a flammable liquid, and accidents were common when lamps were knocked over or refilled carelessly. Then there was gaslight. Gaslighting spread in some cities in the early 1800s, starting with demonstrations and then installed street by street. Gaslight could be much brighter than candles and oil lamps, and it could illuminate streets and large indoor spaces like theaters and factories. But it required a network of pipes and gasworks, so it was mainly an urban technology at first. Even where gaslight existed, it did not instantly transform all evenings into lively nighttime hours for everyone. Many people still lived in darker districts or outside the gas network. And gaslight itself needed labor. Lamps had to be lit and turned off each day, often by lamplighters. So what did people actually do in the evening? The first part of the evening often centered on food and the transition from outdoor work to indoor life. Families ate, cleaned up, and prepared for the next day. People inspected tools, fed animals, and secured doors and shutters. In rural settings, evening chores could include milking, checking livestock, and preparing feed, often done by fading light or with a lantern. After the meal, many homes shifted to quiet, closer-range activities that matched dim light. Conversation was a major part of evening life. People talked, shared news, and told stories. In many cultures, evenings were a key time for oral tradition, histories, folk tales, religious teaching, and family memory. Handwork was common because it could be done close to a flame. Women often spun, knitted, mended clothing, or prepared materials like wool or flax. Men might repair tools, carve wood, twist rope, or perform small indoor jobs. These tasks were chosen not because people lacked ambition, but because the light was not strong enough for complex or risky work. Reading existed, but it was limited by literacy rates, by the cost of books, and by lighting conditions. Reading by candle or oil lamp was possible, but it strained the eyes and required expensive fuel. In households with more resources, a dedicated lamp could support longer reading and writing. In many homes, only one or two people might read aloud, turning reading into a group activity. Music and simple games were also common. Singing required no light. Many indoor games could be played by firelight. Religious practice could shape evenings too, such as prayers or devotional reading. Public social life depended heavily on location and class. In towns and cities, some people visited alehouses, taverns, coffee houses, or other gathering places, especially in early modern Europe, and later in the growing cities of the 1700s and 1800s. These places often invested in better lighting because it attracted customers and allowed business to continue longer. In wealthier homes, evening entertainment could be more elaborate, formal dinners, card games, music, and visits. Such homes used many candles at once, sometimes in chandeliers, wall sconces, and candlesticks spread across rooms. This created a brighter environment, but it required constant management. Candles had to be replaced, wicks snuffed, and wax cleaned. Servants often handled much of this work. In most ordinary homes, however, lighting was concentrated. One lamp or a couple of candles might serve an entire room. People stayed near the light rather than carrying it around. Moving through the house could mean walking through near darkness. Because evenings were darker, homes were often arranged to cope with it. Furniture clustered near the hearth or main lamp. Windows were covered at night to keep out cold and reduce drafts. In many places, people also used shutters for security. The risks of fire shaped evening behavior. Flames were everywhere: candles, lamps, hearths. Houses built from wood, with thatch roofs in some regions, were vulnerable. Cities experienced major fires, and households worried about small, everyday accidents. People learned careful habits: stable candle holders, lanterns with enclosed flames for walking, and strict rules about leaving fires unattended. This caution influenced when people went to bed. Many households preferred to end the day before the fire burned too low or before lighting became too costly. In many places, bedtime came earlier than modern habits, often soon after nightfall, especially in winter. Sleep itself was not always the single, unbroken block many people assume today. Historical research suggests that in parts of Europe, there was a common pattern of first sleep and second sleep in earlier centuries. People might sleep for a few hours, wake for a quiet period, then sleep again. During that middle time, some people prayed, talked, checked on animals, or did small tasks. This was not universal everywhere, and it changed over time, but it matches the idea that nighttime was a flexible, quieter space, rather than a strict 8-hour shutdown. Evening also changed depending on whether you were rural or urban. In rural areas, darkness was deeper. Outside the small circle of home light, the countryside could be nearly black. Travel at night was difficult, and directions were harder without landmarks. People avoided unnecessary trips. If someone had to travel, they might carry a lantern, a torch, or rely on moonlight. In cities, there was more human activity, but also more nighttime control. Before modern police forces, many towns relied on night watchmen and local systems of order. Some places had rules about nighttime movement. Curfew bells in medieval and early modern towns signaled when fires should be covered and when people should be indoors. These customs did not mean every street was empty, but they show that communities treated night as a time requiring extra caution. Street lighting, where it existed, was often minimal before gas. Some cities used oil lamps on main streets, but these were dim and sometimes only lit during certain seasons or hours. People also carried personal lights, lanterns, sometimes even hiring link boys in certain cities to guide them with torches. With the spread of gas street lighting in the 1800s, some city evening life expanded. Brighter streets made it easier to walk, to shop, and to attend theaters or meetings after dark. But gaslight did not erase fear, crime, or accidents. It simply changed the conditions. It also changed work. Factories and workshops could extend hours when fuel and lighting made it possible. This mattered because it began separating time from daylight in a new way. Still, the shift was gradual, and electric lighting later made the most dramatic changes. Now focus on the limits that kept evening activity modest. The first limit was light strength. A candle or lamp creates a small island of visibility. Beyond it, faces and objects blur into shadow. That makes detailed work slow and makes mistakes more likely. The second limit was fuel cost. Every extra hour awake required more candles or more oil, and fuel had to be bought, stored, or produced. For many households, it was not worth spending money on light unless there was a clear need. The third limit was timekeeping. Before cheap clocks and watches, people relied on natural cues: sunset, the position of the moon, church bells, and community routines. Evening was less about exact minutes and more about shared signals. The fourth limit was safety. The dark hid obstacles, thieves, and hazards. Roads were uneven. Animals wandered. Waterways and ditches were hard to see. Indoors, open flames created constant fire risk. So evenings were often quieter, shorter, and more home-centered. Even so, evening life was not empty. It was structured. People used this time for maintenance, planning, and social connection. Evening was when families gathered in one place. It was when older people taught younger ones. It was when neighbors visited, sometimes to share labor, like spinning or food preparation. The darkness encouraged closeness, because the visible space was literally smaller. It also shaped architecture and daily rhythm. Homes emphasized a main room where the fire and light were. Public buildings that used more light, like churches and inns, became important evening centers. In some periods, the richer the household, the more rooms could be used at night, because more rooms could be lit. Outdoor nightlife did exist, but it was selective. Markets and fairs sometimes extended into evening, especially in seasons with longer light. Religious festivals included processions with torches or candles. In some cities, theaters and concert spaces flourished under improved lighting, first with oil and then with gas. But these were not typical experiences for everyone, and they depended on local conditions. Now compare these patterns to the moment electricity began to spread. Electric lighting was different from earlier lighting in three main ways. First, it produced far brighter light with less heat inside a room. Second, it reduced open flames, lowering fire risk. Third, it did not require constant trimming of wicks or replacing candles during the evening. As electric light spread, it allowed evenings to become a major block of productive and social time. Shops could stay open later. Students could study longer. Streets could be lit more evenly. Work hours could be extended more easily. But the key point for understanding the earlier world is that before electricity, evenings were not simply dark, they were managed. People balanced need against cost. They used light carefully. They chose activities that matched what flame lighting could support. They depended on community routines and seasonal cycles. To picture an ordinary evening before electricity, imagine a room with a small, steady glow, a hearth or a single lamp. Most of the room is shadow. People sit close together, facing the light. Hands work slowly. Talk fills the time. The household plans tomorrow around daylight, because daylight is still the main engine of work. That is what evening life before electricity meant for most people. Limited visibility, careful fuel use, strong seasonality, and a steady move toward rest. It was a different relationship with time, with the home, and with the night itself.